people know about the COVID-19 Humanity Betrayal Memory Project, but really everybody should. I quote from their website: "We are documenting the architecture of abuse. We have witnessed horrors carried out in the name of care." Cici, you helped start the COVID-19 Humanity Betrayal Memory Project. Tell me about it and how you got into it.
Well, it was really an act of God. In 1995, I had a daughter who was killed, and the grief almost destroyed me. So when the COVID pandemic was announced, I started blogging. I had a blog since 2016. I started writing about early treatments, and I was researching protocols across the world because I was determined to find something that would save myself, my family, my friends, my loved ones, because I couldn't go through that grief again. And one of the blogs was called "Why the Rejection of Ivermectin." And then I wrote another one called "HCQ, Not for You." And they were like 14-page blogs, and they weren't my opinion. They were fact about protocols being used by other countries and the countries that were working and why it was being denied to the American people. And for some reason, all of my work was getting taken down. My entire YouTube channel came down. Just everywhere I was posting, my website came down. And I'm like, this isn't right. Well, about that time, one of my blogs found its way up to New Jersey, somehow from Texas, in the hands of a former federal prosecutor of 21 years who had gotten out of government because he saw the corruption and wasn't going to go along with it. And at that time, ironically, he was suing Facebook for censorship of early treatments.
And Cici, which time exactly was that?
2020, the end of 2020.
So the end of 2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he saw, all the work I had done, and he contacted me and said, "Would you be on this panel of people from all over the world? We're discussing this case on censorship." And I said, "Absolutely," because I'd already flown to Mexico. I'd already gotten Ivermectin hydroxy in my house. I was helping people left and right, and they were all getting better within 24 hours. So I knew that we had a working early treatment and that it was being kept from us. And so did he. And so we started a Facebook group called The People's Medicine. And we were just trying to get the word out. We were just trying to tell people, don't go to the hospital. You can treat this at home with safe, repurposed, inexpensive early medications, that have a safety profile for 40 years, that people take, even pediatric doses, and that it worked. And our Facebook group kept getting taken down. And we're like, they are doing this on purpose. It was kind of like our aha moment. And so being a former federal prosecutor, he knew that we needed to preserve the historical record. He knew we needed to get this evidence preserved, because they're wiping it away. They're obviously taking down our groups. They're taking down my Facebook page, my YouTube channel. And so we decided we're just going to start documenting these stories. We're going to find every victim from the hospital protocol or the vaccine injured, and we're going to do a video testimony. And we're going to build a case file on each of these people. Well,
and you did that. You started doing that when? In 2021?
2021, the end of 2021, I believe. I believe we launched the actual project at the very beginning of, I think it was January 2020 or December 2021. That's when it was.
Okay, so really early.
Yeah.
Just when the vaccine started.
Yes, and we had a great web developer and project, computer person. And so she built the infrastructure, and then we just started recording stories. And it was Brad and I, and we these stories were like, at first it was hard to believe, these medical murders literally in the hospital. And I was like, people aren't going to believe this. But then we kept hearing the same story, and one turned into 5, and 5 turned into 50, and 50 turned into 400, and next thing you know, we've got over 1,000. And
how did you find the people?
People just found us through word of mouth. But one person would share their story that we did, or they would see. I was speaking a lot out at engagements and events, and saying, and we were putting out on social media, go to our website, document your story. Let's get your story on the record. Let's preserve this. We're going to try to get accountability. At that time, I was heavily looking for attorneys to step in. But these stories, it was like literally reliving the same nightmare over and over, because all the stories were the same, no matter where in the country, how old you were, your comorbidities, your sex, your age. They all had these commonalities. So one of our victims said, I keep hearing the same thing over and over. We need to come up with a document called the 25 Commonalities. And it's the 25 things that we hear almost in every single story. It was almost like a script. And in fact, we named a project the script, because almost every story had the exact same thing. And I mean, I could even start saying what the doctors would say, like, we're going to put you on a vent to give your lungs a rest. If I heard that once, I heard it 1,000 times. Well, about 100, I did the first probably 100 or so, maybe a little bit more interviews, and it was getting to me. I mean, I had to step away from interviewing. So we built this interview team. I was having nightmares, I was crying every day. I mean, these stories are horrific. They're absolutely horrific.
How many interviews did you do,
I
Cesar?
probably over 100.
Over 100 interviews,
Myself.
and all of them, and you started them in 2021. And did you do all of them in 2021?
No, this was going over into 2022.
Okay.
I think I took a break from interviewing towards the end of 2022 and got more on the legal side.
So what was that like? I mean, for you, it sounds like it was a really emotional and traumatizing experience to interview these people. So either people who had survived the hospital stay or people who had lost family members, correct?
Yeah, and we had very few survivors come forward at that time. It was mostly hospital murders. And yes, it was hard for me because I know grief, like at that level. When you lose a child, I mean, I felt these people's pain. And it was so, and they had to watch their loved one be murdered alone in a hospital without them there, just dying alone and scared. And my heart was just, I know these stories like the back of my hand, like they're my own. And I carried those with me. Like, I mean, I felt so pulled into this fight after that I had to do something. And I knew I couldn't interview anymore. It was literally getting to my mental health. I was waking up screaming, reliving that I was being tied down, being forced ventilated, our founder was like, well, we have a backlog of hundreds of people waiting to be interviewed at this point. So
and Cece, how much time would you would interview someone, and how much time would usually pass between what had happened to their family members or maybe happened to themselves?
It was anywhere from 3 days to, we have up to 240 days in a hospital. Most of them were about a month.
Okay. So it was really fresh in their memories.
Oh yeah. Like, I thought you meant how long they spent in the hospital. No, some of them would come right out. Some of them, it took a little longer to face it and, relive the experience again. So,
yeah, that must be hard.
Sometimes
also, how did people react to that? How did people react to that interest being taken in them? That somebody wanted to hear their story, wanted to interview them. You filmed them during the interview.
Yes, we did. We did a
interview.
We did a case.
What was the reaction to that?
Almost 99.9% of them were relieved that there were other people out there. They thought they were crazy. They thought, I'm just I'm the only one that lost someone in the hospital. It must just be me, or I must be grieving too hard. I'm not seeing the facts straight. But then they found a family of other victims. And at that time we started support meetings, and we have up to 13 support meetings a week now.
13 support meetings a week.
Yeah, at this time I'm putting in 60, 70 hours a week volunteering.
Wow. And you do that on, when we spoke earlier, you do that on X, is that correct?
We do them on X, and we do them on our platform. We have a platform that our foundation, pays for, and we have, women's only, men's only, art therapy. We have survivors meeting. We have a Christian-based meeting. We have a Stop the Shots meeting. We have a prayer group. All kinds. Yeah, and these people learned to depend on it, and they became a big family, and they felt empowered because they weren't alone, and they were, these people were grieving so hard, but they were fighting just as hard, and so they were so inspirational to me that that they, even if their statute of limitations had expired or they had gotten a case and it got dismissed, they still were in it. They were still in it for justice and to warn people. And that's what's so amazing about this group, which keeps getting in our Stop the Shots group. We have over 5,000, I think now. So,
5,000 in that one group alone?
and yeah, we do it, and
Wow.
we do that group 7 nights a week.
Amazing. I'm going to put the links to these groups into the description of this video so that everybody can go there and explore it. Because
Yes,
it sounds like, well, if so, you said you have how many groups in total? 13 groups?
we have about 13 support groups, and then we have our Stop the Shots 7 days a week. And we encourage
Okay.
anybody to get in it. You don't have to be vaccine injured. You can just be an activist like me. You can just be a regular American that wants to know what's going on in their country and what they can do about it. That it's a community. So you can go on X and search for Stop the Shots community and just hit join and just pop on when you can. We have experts that come on, professionals, doctors, attorneys, authors. And what we're just trying to do is really spread awareness, because nobody needed to die, and people, it's still happening. I mean, the shots have even, you know, increased. Even though
Right.
protocol is down a little bit, they're still using remdesivir. It's still
Correct.
the standard of care, and it will shut down your kidneys and kill you. When
Mm-hmm.
all they need to do is treat early, like we are supposed to do in any kind of, virus or illness, just like we did growing up. Have fluids, take a little ivermectin and some hydroxy or an antibiotic, and stay home and with some chicken soup. The recovery rate. We have an immune system, and I think that the media and the pharmaceutical industry had such a huge role in convincing people that we did not have our God-given immune system and built to combat just things like that, like we always have. Instead, they tell you to go home until you're blue, come back, when you can't breathe, and then stick you on a kidney, a failed kidney killing drug, and put you on a ventilator, and you're not coming off. And they would trick people, saying that they're just going to do it for a couple of days, when a ventilator is not just, something that you do to rest your lungs. That's a last minute emergency. You're going to die without it kind of treatment. And they were putting people on ventilators at 90% oxygen, which is insane. Just because they got
Yes.
that $40,000 bonus.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you interviewed people, did you find out, or did you get any information about whether so they were talking to you, but did you find out whether they would talk about what they had experienced to other people, to friends, to acquaintances, to, I don't know, people in the grocery store,
They
some,
they started to, after I think they did, a lot of them, it's hard to relive that story, but most of them, after they did their interview, they felt empowered, and they realized the importance of going to share this information. They started protesting outside of hospitals. We have bracelets and stickers and shirts and just different things to get the word out. Most of them are not quiet about it. Some of them are suffering from severe PTSD and are at that point yet, but they're still speaking out in our groups, and a lot of them are very outspoken. They try to get on every podcast they can. Um, our stories, our interviews were recorded so they could share that as much as possible. We were putting those on BitChute, Rumble, X, Facebook, our platform. I mean, you could find their stories pretty much anywhere. And, some of them share that, they share each other's, they share theirs, and they're just trying to warn everybody, because people didn't need to go through this. And it's really profit over patients, and it's medical murder, in my opinion.
yes. So you said at the beginning that before the Humanity Betrayal Memory Project was founded, you were contacted by an attorney, and this attorney was a former federal prosecutor. Can you say who that person is?
Sure. His name is Brad Geyer, and he is just one of the most ethical and courageous men. I mean, he's put his whole life savings into this foundation and this fight. His foundation was started in 2016, the FormerFedsGroup Freedom Foundation, and they were doing mostly humanitarian projects around the world. A lot of them in Vietnam. He works over there with the Vietnamese culture and people a lot for different things, for infrastructure, legal issues. And actually, when the COVID pandemic was announced he was in Vietnam, and he saw that New York kept saying they're running out of ventilators. We got to get more ventilators. And so one of the doctors he works with over there, Dr. Two, he calls it the barefoot doctors because it's a poor country. He started getting really worried about getting them ventilators. And he was like, we got to get y'all some ventilators. You know, the United States is running out of them. You have to have it. And she looked at him like he was crazy. She said, why would we want ventilators? We're just going to put them on there and they're not going to be able to get off and they're going to die. We'll treat this like we treat other viruses, you know, early with ivermectin. And they had less than 500 deaths when our country had 60,000. And then we dropped the vaccine bomb on them, we call it. And within 2 months, they had over 40,000 deaths. So we kind of use that country as in some of the cases, as a control group, because it really shows, you know, these in India, look at Uttar Pradesh, you know, they emptied their hospitals in 2 weeks when they implemented the ivermectin packets. I became friends with an Indian pharmacist who would get me those packets. They're $2.65 a piece. And they had 3 ivermectins, a round of deoxycycline, and some zinc. And they were clearing out their hospitals. And I'm like, you know, here we are charging $4,000 for a drug that's going to kill you, then a $40,000 ventilator. It was all money. I mean, you just follow the money.
Yes, I remember that well, what a tremendous success it was. And you know, back then when that happened, there was some sort of prohibition in the United States of finding out what exactly was in these kits that they distributed in India.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed to know that they put ivermectin in there. I mean, everybody kind of knew, but not officially, because there was kind of censorship on what that
it was called the Zyto pack, and I got thousands of them. And anybody that, you know, got COVID, I would either refer to the doctor, one of the doctors on the right side of history, or my family members. I would just be like, here you go. And they were better within hours.
Wow. So, I mean, you personally must have saved, I don't know how many
over
people.
600 people.
Over 600 people. My goodness. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Cece, you mentioned, so Brett Geyer, he is this former federal prosecutor who founded the what was it called? The
FormerFedsGroup Freedom Foundation.
FormerFedsGroup Freedom Foundation in 2016. So that's interesting. So it wasn't just him. There were other former feds, so former federal
attorneys, agents, you know, just people that saw the corruption in the government and said, hey, we'll work with you. But it was mostly a group of volunteers. And I didn't come on board, of course, until 2020. And then at that time, he said, okay, we're focusing all of our focus on these crimes against humanity regarding the COVID response, and putting everything out there. He was doing like human trafficking stuff and projects in Vietnam with helmets, because you know they'll put entire families on scooters, and you know a lot of the kids were getting brain damage from falling off, and so he did a helmet drive. A lot of them drowned over there because there's a lot of water. They have to wash their clothes, and the kids don't know how to swim. So we sent some Americans, or he did, some American swim team high schoolers over there to teach swim lessons, and he just did a lot of great things over there. But when COVID hit, he was like, okay, there's something going on. We're putting all of our focus on these crimes against humanity, what's happening in our country. And shortly after, and I was just a content writer and an interviewer. I mean, I wasn't anything huge until January 6th happened. And he said, here you go. And just shoved the foundation in my arms pretty much and said, take care of this. And I'm like, I have to go to Washington and defend these political prisoners.
And that's what he did?
Yeah. So
good for him.
He represented several J6 political prisoners. One of them in particular, or two of them in particular, he got off the sedition charge. They were completely innocent, and they were in solitary confinement for over 300 days, where they could not see their family, have a Zoom call, cut their hair, cut their nails. They were very, very mistreated. And the only reason why is because they would not take the COVID jab. If you agreed to take the COVID vaccine, then you could go into general population. But so, you know, here's somebody that spent 300 days in solitary because he wouldn't take an experimental gene therapy and ends up, being found innocent. I mean, it's like China kind of torture. Really was.
Yes.
So our foundation, on behalf of our victims, wrote an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, because he really stood in the gap and kind of bridged the groups together. The J6ers that were being there. This was all a big government operation, right? January 6th, COVID.
Yeah.
All of these broken institutions and issues that we're having, they're all related in some sort. It's all government overreach and money. And, those J6ers that stood up for the COVID community, we felt we needed to stand up for them. And our amicus worked. And, like I said, Brad got Kenneth Harrelson off of the sedition charge, which was the main charge. I mean, he was completely innocent anyway. Thank goodness all of them got pardoned anyway. But it was just a setup from the beginning, and so was COVID. So, but I took over. We built an interview team of victims themselves. So now they're interviewing each other. And talk about a hard job to do is you're listening to someone else's story, reliving your own. But all these people, if anything is good that's come out of this, there's been very, very strong, solid, lifelong friendships built on this, because
I bet.
These people are tight as thieves, and just best friends, because their friendship started on a foundation of the most intimate and tragic event of their lives, not just, hey, we like the same movies or something. I mean, they shared a bond immediately. And, some of them I'm very close friends with, and we talk every day.
So this former FormerFedsGroup Freedom Foundation, does it still exist?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
In fact, we've changed the COVID-19 Humanity Betrayal Project to Voices of C19, because the other project the name was hard for people to remember in the website. So we bought the domain Voices of C19, and we're slowly filtering all the stories over there. But the FormerFedsGroup Freedom Foundation is our main group, and it's.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like the enveloping organization,
right? So we have the FormerFedsGroup Freedom Foundation, and we've got many projects underneath it. We have We the People 50, Recall the Shots. We have our support groups. We have I think there's about 33 things on our list projects that we've done. I can send those to you on our accomplishment, our goals, accomplishments, and current projects that we're doing. So,
and you said earlier that Brad Geyer, the former federal prosecutor, that he used his personal money to build up this project and to fund, because I mean all of this costs money.
Yeah.
Doing the interviews, building the website. So it's just completely privately funded.
Yeah, and donations. I mean, we are a 501(c)(3), but everybody's tapped out at this point, and so we're all volunteers. And he's put, his savings into this. He sees the importance. He's got kids and grandkids. This is a humanity thing. If there's a sword that we all have to die on, it's this one, I think.
So, since the inauguration of Trump, were you approached by anybody in the administration taking interest in what you're doing and offering some kind of support?
Very little. I mean, there's been some congressmen and some senators that have stepped up and spoken out, but nothing's really changed. I mean, we're battling the PrEP Act, which is the biggest thorn in our side. Working with James Roguski, that's how we got connected. In fact, I'm on a brainstorming session with him today, because
yes, and just for the audience, James Roguski has a great project called Repeal the PrEP Act, and his website is called repealtheprepact.com. So go there if you're interested, and he's looking for volunteers to support him.
Sign the petition, please, at repealtheprepact.org.
Yeah.
It's very important. Most, if you went down the street and asked 10 strangers, how do you feel about the PrEP Act? They wouldn't even know what it is.
Correct.
And I would say most, if not all, Americans would be against it if they did know. So that's a good call to action to your audience, is read it, learn what it is. I mean, if the least you can do is just learn about this specific law and then educate a couple people a day, That would help if a lot of people did that.
So just tell me briefly what the PrEP Act is.
So it was a bill that was slid into a larger bill when Katrina happened, and it's been amended several times. But what it does, it gives blanket immunity to the hospitals, doctors, pharmaceutical companies for anything considered a covered countermeasure regarding the COVID response. So any kind of medication that they say is a covered, and that's a military term. So I don't want people to be confused because this is a military operation. Um, if you are killed by the ventilator or the Remdesivir or the shot, or you're injured by the shot, you have no recourse. They got blanket immunity for that and shielded by the PrEP Act. And we had 100 something cases out at one time, and we're down to 3, I think, because they all were dismissed on the PrEP Act immunity. And it's got to
yes, and we'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got to be repealed, and Trump can't do it. Kennedy can't do it. It's got to be an act of Congress. So we have to find, some brave congressmen that have some moral courage and put political pressure on them and tell them, you vote this out of law or we're not going to support you anymore. I don't care what's letters after your name. This is unconstitutional. James wrote a really great article on 8 ways the PrEP Act violates the Constitution. I really encourage, he's done so much work. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of him. Go to his website, repealtheprepact.com, and read his articles, his Substacks, his memes, all the stuff that he's written, and he's done the work for you. And you just need to read it and learn what it is. And, most of the big name senators and Democrats actually were the ones that were standing up against it when it was first put into law. But it did get through, and it's unconstitutional. It needs to come out because it's just not fair that a hospital or a pharmaceutical company, first of all, it was a government agency making a deal with an industry to write away our rights, which on its face is just baffling, on itself. Even if you took COVID out of it, that should never have happened.
It would be interesting to interview the 454, however many congressmen there are, and ask them what they know about the PrEP Act.
Exactly.
That would be really interesting. I would love to know that, and also ask the senators. Yes, and the PrEP Act, it needs to be, so the PrEP Act is an act that was passed in 2005, but it needs to be declared for a disease. So it was declared for COVID-19, was also declared for 8 other diseases. Many of them became really, more dangerous because of gain of function research. And they all now have this full immunity shield of the PrEP Act through the PrEP Act declaration. So what RFK can do is he can end the PrEP Act declaration for COVID-19 and for MERS and for Ebola and Zika and all the other things that it has been declared for.
But they've extended it.
Declarations go back to 2008. Yes, they extended the one for COVID-19 until December 2029, and I think November or December of 2024, just before the new administration came in. But nothing has changed. Everything is exactly the same. The PrEP Act is still in force, has been declared for all these diseases, including COVID-19.
Right. And if these are safe and effective, why do you need immunity? It's...
Yes, of course. That's a very good question. All right. Oh, I have a question here. The cases in there, I saw that in the categories it says they're also outside of the US, but I couldn't find any. Do you have cases from outside of the US?
We do. Well? We have some from Canada. I haven't looked recently how many of those, but we will take any cases if you want to document your story for sure. I haven't looked at the case list lately because I've been so busy with other things, but we do. It's not just for America, but most of our cases that we file or we find attorneys to file, I've been in the States.
Right. Because that's great, because I'm going to share my screen. I'll show people where they can document their story. So, no matter where you are, if you're in Japan or Australia, doesn't matter. You can document your story. I don't know if other countries have something similar to this Humanity Betrayal Memory Project. Do you know?
I don't think so. I mean, I know that we were the first, and what it is, it's a large searchable database of these COVID stories that attorneys can use, authors, historians, sociologists, because we're going to have to keep this preserved. It's on a private server, it's all backed up, preserve this evidence. So many people, through the years will be able to go and look at this database and see what happened to these people. And when we have a brave attorney to come up and say, okay, we're going to do a class action, or we're going to do a criminal case, or we're going to do some civil cases, some false claims, then they'll tell me the state or the parameters of the victims that they're looking for, and I can pull those and send it straight to them. So we've kind of done the beginning groundwork for the attorneys, so they don't have to start from scratch, getting the full history. We've already got that for them, so we can just send them the case files, or I can do it, download a spreadsheet.
Yes. Have you been in touch with these two attorneys? I think Mimi Miller
Rachel
and
Rodriguez.
Rodriguez.
I work
Yes.
I work with them closely. Mm-hmm.
Oh, excellent. Tell a little bit about what they are trying to do.
So I can't speak highly enough about those two women either. I love them to death. They are filing criminal briefs with the state AGs. Now, sometimes some states you have to go through the DAs, and a DA has to refer it to an AG. And some states you can go straight to the AG. So it depends on the state's penal code and how that state works. But they're filing criminal cases against Fauci and company, Collins, Barrick, Walensky, that whole Burks, that whole criminal group, criminal charges. Well, they're trying to get the state AGs to open criminal investigations by filing these briefs and doing all the work for them, basically saying, here is, an 86-page complaint with all the victims as the exhibit from our database. And so it's not on behalf of our law firm, it's on behalf of these victims, your constituents of your state, your citizens. And this is what we can prove that these people did. And these are charges like murder, manslaughter, racketeering, terrorism, kidnapping, very serious criminal charges. So they're going state by state and doing that and having to tweak each complaint depending on whether that has to go to the DAs, and hoping, like in Texas, we filed the brief with 22 DAs, hoping one of them would refer it to an AG. And some states, they've sent it straight to the AG. So we've done 7 so far, working on number 8 and 9 right now. But 2 of those 7, and I can't say which because they are open investigations, 2 of those 7 have agreed to open a criminal investigation on them. So that's very promising.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And that's in Texas, you said?
Well, I can't say which states they are.
Oh, you can't say. Okay.
But that could, if we can get one criminal case through, then that will open the doors for civil cases again, and possibly be able to reinstate people's statutes, because it hasn't been for them lack of trying to get attorneys. They're trying desperately to get attorneys, calling me too, all day long, and we're getting just shut down. It's them, the attorneys not taking the cases. So that's really not their fault that they're not getting representation.
So why is it that the attorneys are not taking these cases?
Well, because they don't think they can win because of the PrEP Act, number one. Number two, they're extremely expensive. Men mal wrongful death cases, like the Schara case, the family spent over $1 million. Most victims don't have that kind of money, but the attorneys won't take them because they don't see a path through. I mean, we're up against a rigged system right now. Our judicial system is broken. Our court system is broken. We've got unconstitutional laws in place that give, blanket immunity. So there, people get really mad at the attorneys. We have had many brave ones step up and try, like Warner Mendenhall, Rachel Rodriguez, Brad Geyer, Dan Watkins, Andy Barnhart, Mimi Miller, just some wonderful attorneys. But, just like the Schara case, they spent $1 million and they lost. And it got past the PrEP Act. I think there's something deeper going on besides this. I mean, I really think this is a spiritual battle. And I think it has a lot to, I can't wrap my head around how all those jurors could vote against what they heard, vote against a fake DNR, vote against obvious overdosing using deadly, medications. I mean, they proved their case. But yeah, I don't know if it's groupthink or people haven't found their voice to stand up to their peers, or I think it's a deeper thing on a societal level that more than maybe they got bribed by the pharmaceutical companies, which is always a possibility. But to get everybody to think the same way on something that was, to me, so obvious. I just think there's something deeper within our society that's gone wrong and gone astray, and people are afraid to speak out or stand on their own 2 feet, or just have a lack of respect for human life. And I don't know the answer. I think about that all the time, but I know that, groupthink and the strong personalities maybe dominating the weaker personalities in the group, in the jurors. I don't know. It's a very strange thing, place that we're at, because I was always taught to speak my mind and have my own beliefs, do my own research, make decisions based on my own, opinion and heart and mind. And I just think that a lot of people are so easily persuaded now. I mean, look at the media. Look at how easily people are persuaded to go take an experimental vaccine, and they wanted to be the first in line. They're just like,
well, probably not anymore.
Right.
I think that has probably changed. Cici, since you already started talking about Grace Schara, I think we should just discuss her case right now. But before we do that, one question about the attorneys. So you gave many good reasons why an attorney would be, reluctant to take on a case like that. But does the following also play a role? Namely, that attorneys might think, oh, if I take a case like that, it might damage me. It might damage my reputation. Just the willingness of taking cases like that will put me in a certain corner that I don't really want to be identified with, and maybe some big law firm is not going to hire me, or if I have any association with that. Does that play a role as well?
Yes, and it's the big firms that aren't taking any of the cases. These cases that have been picked up are solo or just small firms that they're big. They don't have the big clients that could possibly pull out, not have them represent them, or they're already representing pharmaceutical companies, or don't want to be associated with these cases. Because I don't know any of the big law firms that, besides maybe the biggest Aaron Siri, standing up against the shots. Thank goodness for him. But any of the big firms won't touch these cases.
Yeah. Aaron Siri is great, and his law firm, I think, is pretty big. Probably not as big as some of these white shoe law firms, but it's very interesting what you say, because you see that same tendency. The small law firms, the small medical practices, people who are independent, who work for themselves and not for some big medical group, or
Yes. Yeah, same with the doctor.
These are the ones that have the freedom to act the way they feel called on, and who are doing it. And that's also true, I think, for government in general. If you have all these huge governmental organizations, and nothing on, the whole subsidiarity principle, that you try to do on a local level what can be done on a local level, and only delegate the few things that really cannot be done efficiently or effectively on a local level. Only you delegate only that to a higher level. That is such a wholesome principle, and it brings out the best in people, because people have agency. They are actually making a difference. They are called upon to use their own intelligence and their own moral judgment to act. And that is something, I think, that we have really learned from the whole COVID disaster.
Yeah, and this really is a grassroots movement from the regular people. I mean, it's the small activists, it's the injured, it's the people that have been subjected to the medical murders, it's the Julie Threats and the Ronald Owens Jr. that go county to county every single Tuesday and speak to the county commissioners, every single Tuesday, and they get 3 minutes or they get 1 minute to say their piece. And they, it's the small people that's growing this movement. It's the people that are putting little signs on bathroom stalls, and groups like ours and many others that, Freedom Council, an attorney platform where independent attorneys, solo attorneys can go and get help from other attorneys that have done this and learn how to fight these cases. I mean, it's the Stop the Shots community. It's the Former Feds Group. It's, just so many organizations that have just started with 3 people and have just grown and grown and grown, because more people are seeing it now. They are waking up. In the beginning, it was very depressing. I felt like we were on defense and being shut down completely. And I really think, even though we had a loss with the Schara case, that testimony is on the record. It's going to serve a purpose. And, more people have woken up because of what they've done than we had before. And that's just it really is a battle against good and evil. And, it's people can't straddle the fence anymore. You're either on team death and evil, or you're on team humanity and life and God. So you've got to pick a side.
Right. So before we go to the Grace Schara case, just a quick question: Are you back? So are you back on YouTube? Are you back on Facebook?
I'm back on Facebook, and I have a Rumble channel. I have a podcast, and I've been on many, many podcasts as well. And I'm on X, but my YouTube channel and all of my stuff, even my personal family Christmases, everything was wiped. It was devastating.
Everything was wiped, and you haven't gotten it back.
Mm-mm.
Wow, it's disgusting.
It is. And I was just posting interviews of people telling me their story. Well, it wasn't like I was giving medical advice or pushing my opinion. I was just listening to somebody that, with the proof of their own medical records in their hand, are telling people what happened, and YouTube saying it's against community standards to post truthful interviews. It's very
no wonder Google removed its motto years ago, which was "Don't be evil."
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Look in the mirror, Google. Look in the mirror. Yeah.
Let's go to Grace Schara and give me just a summary of the case and then the verdict.
This case holds a special place in my heart because right after she was murdered, this is a beautiful 19-year-old woman with Down syndrome, high functioning, drove a car, played the violin, was a comedian, just a beautiful light person, beautiful soul. I flew to Wisconsin to speak at her first rally. I'm from Texas. This was February in Wisconsin. I've never been so cold in my life. But I was in tears in my rental car. Going, I don't think I can do this. But I felt honored to be asked to come up there and speak on behalf of her. She died on my birthday. I don't know. I just always felt a special connection. The Schara family, they're wonderful people. Scott and Jess, her sister, and Cindy, the mom, and they saw what happened. She was overdosed on lorazepam and Precedex, and another sedative drug. I think it was Ativan. I can't remember the last one, but it was clear overdosing. And then here's a woman who has Down syndrome, and they made the family leave the hospital for a short period of time, and she was not a DNR, and they labeled her as one.
Which means do not resuscitate.
Right. And they labeled her as one. And as they were watching their daughter die, they're screaming, "Save our daughter, save our daughter." And the nurses and doctors just had their hands folded and just let her die right in front of their eyes. It got past the PrEP Act. It's a very historic and important case, even though we lost. Which was,
how did it get past the PrEP Act?
Because it wasn't covered countermeasure. It wasn't remdesivir or ventilator or anything. It was, they had a battery charge and wrongful death charge because it was a clear overdosing. I mean, they showed the witnesses showed the half-life of the drugs, and then she shouldn't have been. First of all, Precedex shouldn't be given for more than 24 hours, and I think she got 3 or 4 days worth. And then they piled on the morphine. Which and if you've got COVID and you're already having trouble breathing, why are you giving respiratory depressant drugs?
Yes, and also do not resuscitate. I mean, that's not something that was covered by the PrEP Act declaration. I should also add that for the PrEP Act, when the PrEP Act is declared, then a roster of drugs, so medications like Remdesivir. Also, a roster of devices like ventilators are declared covered under this act. So you're supposed to use these particular drugs and devices to treat patients. And if you do that, then you are completely free from all civil liability, not criminal liability, but that's very hard to prove.
Yeah.
So things like, a DNR, they didn't declare that under the PrEP Act. Maybe they'll do that next time, but they hadn't. So that's why they could get around it.
And that's
if I understand it correctly.
That's the family or the power of attorney, medical power of attorney's decision whether to have your loved ones be a DNR or not. And they did not sign a DNR. She was not a DNR, but the hospital made her one. And that's why it's so shocking. I mean, Warner, who's a dear friend of mine, the lead attorney on this case, his opening statement, I mean, everybody was in tears. I followed it very closely. He was crying. Some of the jurors were crying. Everybody in the courtroom. And then you had this like robotic defense attorney that didn't resonate with anybody. The whole thing is very strange to me. And then you come back with the voting no on all of the charges. It's just, I really, in my heart, thought this.
Well, that's incomprehensible.
Yeah.
How? So you said the jurors were crying when they were hearing
At several points in the trial. I mean,
okay,
that's why everybody was shocked by this verdict. I don't know what happened, whether it was just some stronger personalities dominating the other personalities, but I do know that one juror asked her decision not to be on the final paperwork. I don't know what that means. And I haven't talked to Warner since the verdict came out. I did watch the family's statements. They are very, very faithful family, very God-driven family. They fought the good fight. They didn't do this for revenge. They didn't do this for anything but to show the world and for the rest of the victims what's going on in hospitals. They were willing to, fight the good fight. They think that God knew what the outcome was going to be anyway, and I believe that too. But there's a bigger reason, that this case. We have all this amazing testimony.
Yeah, there must be. I mean, they sued the hospital. Is that correct?
And the doctor and the nurse. Mm-hmm.
And is that what is that? Is that like a private hospital or?
It's Ascension Hospital, which they have several hospitals, but the one that Grace was at was St. Elizabeth's.
So it was a private hospital that was sued. I mean, it sounds like totally rigged because the evidence was so overwhelming. But as you pointed out earlier, if you get one criminal case through, if you get one decision in favor of the people who sue, the people who were harmed, then you open the floodgates.
Yeah, and I think public opinion will start to turn because it's hard for the regular people that have not been just engulfed in this whole thing and haven't seen all this play out to believe that hospitals are killing people, that your media is lying to you, that your doctors are lying to you, that your government's everybody that you're supposed to be able to trust have lied to you. And that's a real hard psychological barrier to cross. And so I think the normal person was like, a hospital would never do that. A doctor would never do that. When a hospital would do that when you're getting $300,000 a patient to do that, exactly that. Money has corrupted our health industry and we don't have healthcare anymore. We have sick care. Big Pharma does not make cures. They make customers. And, people have to realize that we have to take our health into our own hands now. We have to eat right. We have to protect our immune system, exercise, get enough sunlight, stay mentally, physically, and spiritually healthy. And then we don't have to depend on all these.
Which is hard under these circumstances.
It's so hard.
Talk about
everybody needs to be on Xanax.
Yes, that's right. So, this the defense attorney, you said he kind of appeared like robotic.
Yeah.
What was his argument?
I mean, he just put on people that, that she died from COVID pneumonia. And, everybody has bought into that narrative. Even the people that got Remdesivir, which stops your kidneys so the fluid backs up into your lungs and you actually get pulmonary edema. But then they can call it COVID pneumonia. because your lungs are affected, and then put you on a
Which they
ventilator.
did.
Everybody
Yes.
bought into this narrative that that's just what COVID did. We don't know. It's a novel virus. That's just what COVID did. And that she was going to die
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
And so,
yeah.
whether the jurors all bought into that or whether they, it was a group think psychological thing. I think they proved their case to the ones that are awake and know what's going on. But for the regular person, it's such an important case. We got great testimony on the record. I feel like it's going to be used.
Good, good. That should be useful.
It will be useful, and there's a bigger reason for this. And I'm so grateful to Scott and his family for reliving this and going through this. I heard him.
Are they going to appeal?
I don't know yet. I haven't talked to Warner. I probably will today. I talked to him briefly when the trial, but he couldn't say anything because he was under a gag order. He just wanted to, touch base and say that.
God, I hate these gag orders.
I know.
Everybody's put under a gag order, which is atrocious.
Well,
you're not just talk about it. You're not free to disclose anything about your side.
We have had a case that did win. Actually, they settled, but she can't talk about anything about it because she's under a gag order. That was part of the settlement. So
forever? That's like forever.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like
so corrupt.
Some of these widows, they lost their primary breadwinner. I mean, some of them can't pay their bills, and they were housewives, and these husbands were young and didn't have life insurance or something, so they needed this money, and so I don't blame them for agreeing to this. And then we have some that were like, we don't care about the money. They're not going to shut me up. I'm not going to settle if I can't talk about it. So
they should form a group called "I'm under gag order" or "We all under gag
that's
order."
That's a good
idea. Figure out why that might be.
Yeah.
Why are there so many of us? And boy, would you like to know what we could tell you?
Yeah.
It's really atrocious. I hope they're going to appeal. You said that the case cost like $1 million, something
at
like
least.
that. Huge amount of money. So how? I mean, they don't have them. Who has that money? Almost nobody has that money. So did they find a firm like Aaron Series firm to take them on pro bono, or how did they?
No, Scott, their family put up the money.
My God, they did.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
To fight for everybody, fight for just accountability. Yes. And I love that family. They are. I mean, I was in tears yesterday when I was listening to the verdict live. I was in disbelief. But I really, thought they were going to win this. But Grace's life.
I thought so too.
Yeah,
I thought so too. Naively, as it turns out. So
her life was not in vain. She did not die in vain. That's for sure.
What was the Department of Justice in any way involved in this case?
I don't think so. But they've got the government's got their little fingers in so much. I wouldn't even. It would not surprise me if there was some agency or some pharmaceutical giant or something that meddled its way in. But as far as I know, no, it was just a civil case. The Schara is against Ascension Hospital. It's still hard for me to comprehend that all the jurors would vote the way they did, but that's what happened. And I think we'll learn down the line, why and how this case is going to really play an important role in cases to come, because it did wake up a lot of people. It really did. Anybody that followed the case, it was a historic case. It was a landmark case. The first COVID protocol case that be brought in front of a jury. That's right there is, I just got goosebumps. It speaks for itself.
That's incredible in itself, right? The first COVID case that was brought in front of a jury when did the case start? A couple of months ago? 2020.
It started, opening arguments were June 2nd, but the case, filed years ago.
Yes. Okay. But okay. So it got in front of the judge in June 2025.
And
when did she die? When did Grace die?
December 13th, 21, I believe. 21 or 22. Okay. I'm trying, all the years are running together. I think it's 22. October 13th. October 13th, 2022, because I believe I was in Wisconsin February of 2023. Yeah.
It would be really interesting to put together the statistics of how many Down syndrome COVID patients were euthanized in that way, and
Why?
also other developmentally, I don't know, disabled or people. Because I found a case. I don't know if Grace is one of your cases on your website or
She
not.
is.
She
She
is.
is.
She
And
is okay.
when
I found it.
our data shows, just from our small sample, that they were killing three demographics mainly: the young, strong husbands, which leaves single moms, and some dependent on the government now maybe for assistance. It's all about control. So young, strong husbands, um, the elderly, because they can just say, oh, they were old, they're going to die anyway, cold would have knocked them out. They can you know convince people. And the special needs and disabled.
This, yeah. So, that's so. Yeah, I knew about the elderly and the special needs, but the young, strong husbands.
In fact, we have a case that it was a family: the mom, the dad, the 26-year-old father, single father, and one other family member, and they all went into the hospital to get monoclonals, and they all got COVID at the exact same time. They're all, they lived next door to each other, and they gave the monoclonals to everybody but the 26-year-old man. And the mom was like, I want my son, his name's Jonathan, to get the monoclonals too. And they said, no, he's a young, strong white man. He doesn't need it. Why?
White men.
Yeah, why the color
So
coming
you
in there?
have you don't. It's not enough to be young and strong. You also have to be white.
So they all got better. He gets sick, has to go in the hospital. The entire hospital is filled with young, strong white men, and he dies. And
Terrible.
it's almost like when I say these things, it's like people are like, that didn't happen. It's hard to believe, but it did. And that's not the only case. The only time, like some of our survivors, they only survived if a loved one was able to get into the hospital, or you knew somebody. Like we have a case, Jeff Nuttall case in Colorado. He was on the Remdesivir ventilator death track. And because his wife knew somebody at the top of the, CEO of the hospital, his protocol changed like that. He got off of that on the Ivermectin. He was out the door. Um, it was, you had a bounty on your head when you went into the hospital and you said you had COVID, because they got a COVID bonus for putting COVID minutes on it. So the testing, of course, we know the fraudulent testing. Then if you were put on Remdesivir, you got 20% bonus on your entire hospital bill. Then if they put you on the ventilator, then you got another 40,000. And then if you went out through the morgue with COVID on your death certificate, you got an additional bonus. AJ DePriest, an amazing researcher, did a white paper called Follow the Blood Money. And it came out the average across the country. If you take all the states, each state had a little bit different money from CMS that each COVID case got, but the average was approximately $300,000 a patient. Now you kill 100 people in your hospital. That hospital just made lots of money. And here's the administration telling the doctors what they can and can't use, instead of doctors being able to treat their patients. And a lot of doctors would tell us, well, I wouldn't give my loved one Remdesivir, but I need my paycheck. I'm like, well, that makes you a murderer because, if but you care about your paycheck more. But, they were threatened with their license, and some of them, the brave ones, were stripped of their license. But to me, and we've tried this angle, we've had to try to get creative with the causes of action, is that's practicing medicine without a license, because usually the administrators aren't doctors. Sometimes they are, but rarely they're administrators. And so they really took away the doctor's right to treat their own patients.
Yes, and for the hospitals, now the hospitals were also in a difficult position. Just to put, because you ask yourself, how is this all possible? It's not that everybody is a monster,
Right?
Where everybody who is a hospital administrator is a monster and every doctor is a monster. No, that's not the case, not at all. But so if you look at the hospitals, so we all know that when the lockdowns were declared, that people were told, well, you can't go to the hospital. All your medical appointments are going to be canceled, and don't come in until you have COVID, or until something absolutely death threatening is happening. So people didn't go to the hospitals. The hospitals were empty. They were empty. They didn't make any money. They would have gone bankrupt. So you had these administrators, and they were in this conundrum. What are we going to do? We are going to go bankrupt. Oh, what is our lifeline? The lifeline is to make tons of money with COVID.
Yes.
And they took the lifeline, which is, well, I mean, I'm not excusing it, but at least it gives you some sort of idea of what position they were in. So everybody was kind of put into a position where they were coerced to do something deeply, deeply evil.
And the doctors and nurses too. I mean,
yeah, and the doctors and nurses, the same thing. Yes,
they've always relied on the CDC and our health agencies to give them correct information on how to treat a certain epidemic or disease. And we all know that data was not true. And so these doctors and nurses are just following what they've always done. But there comes a point where you see it's not working. Then you need to take the responsibility of your position. And we've got many nurses and doctors that did and said, hold on, everybody I'm giving Remdesivir to is dying. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yes. And of course, I mean, I'm sure there were administrators in these hospitals. I don't know a single one, but I would think that there were a bunch of them who thought, what is going on here is really spooky. I don't like this at all. They are clearly trying to force us, the hospital, to declare all these cases as COVID cases and to make us get the money. And they can do that because we have no patients left. And I should speak out about this because there's something deeply, deeply wrong here. But then they had the censorship, so even if you try to speak out, you wouldn't, your YouTube or whatever, Twitter back then or Facebook, you would not be able to be heard. So there was again the question, what am I going to do? Am I just going to sacrifice my own life and my family's life? Or am I, so everybody was kind of being coerced, being blackmailed into making these horrible decisions.
And why give a 20% bonus for using a certain drug, Remdesivir, which was a failed Ebola drug? It killed 54% of the people in the trials where that had to be pulled.
Right.
Why, if your drug works so well, why do you have to pay, doctors to use it or the hospitals to use it? And why wasn't Ivermectin a covered countermeasure? I mean, it's been used for years. I mean, why?
Of course, it should have been. It's interesting. In the beginning, hydroxychloroquine was a covered countermeasure, and then they took it off
because it worked.
And they did. You remember? And you remember this study, this fake study, as it turned out, this big study that allegedly showed what a deadly drug hydroxychloroquine is. Well, that was just a total fraud. But because of the study, the hydroxychloroquine was taken off as a covered countermeasure declared under the PrEP Act. So they got rid of that.
They got rid of everything that worked. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? I went into a GNC, a vitamin supplement store during all this to get some zinc and some vitamin D or something. And I asked if they had some quercetin, which is a zinc ionophore. It's the natural form of hydroxychloroquine, basically. It carries the zinc into the cell because zinc is the virus killer, but it has a hard time permeating our cells. And they said, no, they pulled it from our shelves. And I said, they pulled quercetin from your shelf? Why? He goes, they pulled everything off our shelf that worked for COVID. This was clerk.
And in France, very early on, they pulled, because in France you could buy Ivermectin over the counter. So they pulled all the Ivermectin.
And all of a sudden it was horse-based. Yeah, that's when I'm like, these people are the biggest liars. It won a Nobel Peace Prize. Humans have been using it since 1987. I mean, it's just, yes, you use it on your dog, but we use it on people, scabies, kids, for lice. I mean,
but it's such a miracle drug. It works so well. It works on humans, works on horses, works on all sorts of.
And people don't realize it's organic too. It comes from the soil. Hydroxychloroquine comes from the Sanoa tree, the bark of the Sanoa tree. It's been used since the Revolutionary War. It was called Jesuits powder. It was critical in us winning the war. They would, one way that they fought the war was stop the transportation to the soldiers of hydroxychloroquine. Well, back then it was just chloroquine, but they were able to make it a little less, a little safer, adding the water to it, the water molecule. But those are both safe, early, effective treatments that worked. And there was very few hospitals that or doctors that would administer it, or pharmacists that would
Right.
dispense it.
Yes, yes, yeah. So you a little while ago you mentioned a name. I think it was Priest. He who wrote this follow the blood money. Tell me about that. I haven't
AJ
heard about that.
DePriest, she is amazing. She is an expert on the financial side and the incentivized side for the hospitals. And I'll send you the paper. It was like 70 pages. She shortened it for me to about 15. When I find attorneys, I send that to, because it really breaks down why and how the money flowed. And it's called Follow the Blood Money. It's a very well researched, and she's just brilliant.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll send you that paper. You'll
Yes,
enjoy it.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what I would like to do now is I would like to share my screen. I want to look at the mission statement. It's beautifully written. It's a really nice mission statement you got there. So here is the mission statement of CHBMP, which is a bit of an unfortunate name, but you already mentioned that you're going to change the name to Voices of C19. CHBMP stands for COVID Humanity Betrayal Memory Project. And I read the mission statement and I thought it was really well written. I don't know who wrote it.
We all had input. We all had input in it, and I really like our foundation's mission statement too.
Yes. So it says here the COVID-19 Humanity Betrayal Memory Project was founded to document and preserve the stories of those who were harmed by COVID policies, protocols, and mandates. And then it goes into the origins, how that all started. And it also talks about the FormerFedsGroup, so we can skip this. Our mission is threefold. Never forget. Recognizing that the stories of many victims are being censored, suppressed, and deliberately removed from public view, we seek to give voice to those who have been victimized by inhumane COVID policies, protocols, and mandates. We are preserving these stories so that they cannot be memory holed. Each case we archive raises awareness of the scope of these crimes, and we encourage others to cross-post, mirror, copy, repost, and share this content. These victims deserve to be heard. Their stories deserve to be told, and what happened to them must not be allowed to fade from view. And then they talk about, so the second part of the mission is to provide relief, recognizing the immense trauma experienced by these victims and their families. We aim to provide a platform for support, connection, and healing. And you already talked about the many support groups you have and spaces where you create a platform for survivors to share their stories and help each other navigate the grief and aftermath of what they endured. And now this is interesting here. It says, in many cases, doctors have joined these calls and confirmed the truths many victims already suspected. So tell me a little bit about this. How often does that happen, that doctors join these calls?
All the time. We have some amazing doctors out there that have stood on the right. We call them the doctors on the right side of history. Dr. Marble, Dr. Bain, Dr. Witcher. There's many that have come out and supported. Sabine Habzan. There's just many, Dr. Guy Fonti. I could go on, but they saw what was happening, and they said no. Scott Miller was a PA in Washington, got his license stripped for treating with ivermectin. It was put through hell by the Washington Medical Board. Still fighting that fight, but they will come out and say, Remdesivir kills you, we wouldn't use it, and everything you believed was true. What you saw happened.
Do you also have doctors that kind of went along with the whole thing? Maybe, not having a good feeling about it, or maybe they were just completely duped. I don't know. That doctors who went along with the whole thing and now have doubts or now realize that what they did was terrible.
There was some.
Do people like that also join?
There are a few doctors that listened to the CDC protocol in the beginning, or the FDA protocol, and gave some remdesivir, but immediately saw this isn't working and stopped, and then were fired because they wouldn't continue to use it. Many of those, but some of them were like, know from the beginning as well. And now completely, speaking out against the shots or these hospital protocols. They started using the ivermectin, saw that it was working. Now, a lot of them have changed their practice to completely focus on helping the vaccine injured or the people with long haul COVID or just COVID itself, which they call everything COVID now. So, I mean, you sneeze, oh my God, you have COVID. It's just like, please. Funny stories. I went surfing in Nicaragua for a little bit of a break this past January, and I literally saw a man on a surfboard in the middle of the ocean with a mask on. I mean, I'm like, people have really lost their minds. I mean, I thought driving in the car by yourself with the mask on was bad, but when I saw somebody on a surfboard in the middle of the ocean in Nicaragua, I'm like, we've lost it. People have lost their minds. But anyway, I think.
But back to these doctors. I mean, I think it's never too late. The longer you have been, and the longer you have been duped, or the longer you have been doing this, the harder it is to get out of it. But it's also, I think, really important, it's very, very important that even people who have been going along for it, maybe for years, when they realize that it was not right what they did, that they are welcome at groups like that as well.
Now, ego plays a really big role in a doctor's life. And if they, given or recommended the deadly death shot to hundreds of patients, they're not going to come out and say they're wrong. They're still going along with it. And they know,
yeah, you're right.
They're too far invested in this, and they're too complicit in it, because they went along with the narrative. They didn't do their, it's so hard to wrap your mind around that a vaccine could come out in that period of time, be a completely new technology, a messenger RNA, which means giving your body the message to make the deadly part of the virus, the spike protein, with no off switch. They did such a great job at scaring people by killing people in the hospital and inflating the COVID cases on the TV and the media, that people didn't use their critical thinking skills and ran out and were trying to be first in line to get this experimental EUA so-called vaccine. So, doctors bought into it, people bought into it, and very few people were like, the first time I heard about it, I was like, no, that doesn't make sense. I mean, it just, on its face, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, first of all, does anybody even know what mRNA means? Does anybody even know that it's a failed technology that, they've been experimenting with for years? I mean, why would you want to inject your body with something you don't even know the ingredients to?
Yes, I guess many people did it under duress anyways, later with the mandates, but also back then there was still a basic trust of the American population into the government. At least there was basic trust that the government's game wasn't to kill you.
Right.
That's certainly what I thought. And that is a very reasonable thought in what was supposed to be an open and democratic society, or based on a constitutional republic. So that was very reasonable and very normal. And anybody who would have said in 2018 or 19 that they are of the opinion that that there are dark forces in the government who are out to kill as many of us, and especially the elderly and the infirm and the young healthy white husbands, would have been declared a complete lunatic.
Yeah, and I don't blame anybody that got it because they were betrayed, they were lied to. I personally thought, I knew they were trying to kill us because I've been studying Agenda 21 for years and years and years and fighting that. But I knew,
good point. Yeah,
but there are not very many, and of course I was called crazy. I've been called crazy for years for thinking.
Of course you
just
were.
Read the document.
And most people, and most people don't want to be called crazy,
right?
And most people want to make a career where they cannot, where opinions like that are just impossible to
when people call me a conspiracy theorist, I was like, thank you. It means I think for myself. I appreciate that. I take it as a compliment. But
But what you said about the doctors, that's also interesting. You're right. Doctors have big egos often, especially in hospitals where they are kind of in, in German, doctors are called, I don't know if you call them like that in America as well, but I grew up in Germany. So in Germany, doctors used to have, that probably has changed in the meantime too, but they were one of the most admired people in society,
Oh yeah,
doctors. And they were called half gods in white.
they're
And
yeah.
half gods in white. So, and that's probably how at least some hospital doctors in high positions think of
They
themselves. So
do.
there is a big ego, and also as a doctor, you are in this very powerful position, which brings out, you have power over your patient. You have intellectual power. You have the power of knowledge. You have the power of at least directing or determining the treatment of the patient, or withholding treatment, all this. So that probably brings out the worst in people, like really dark tetrade
Oh yeah, a lot of them do think they're God. I mean, they have a
traits.
human life in their hand. I
Yep,
mean, they
exactly.
can kill you or not kill you. I mean, it's doctors have huge egos, and they are people. They are corruptible. They do make mistakes. They do sometimes not do their research. They can be lazy. I mean, they're still human beings at the end of the day. And I always tell people, not all doctors are bad. We have some really great doctors, but if you need to go see one, if you need to go see a specialist, the first question out of your mouth needs to be, do you support the COVID-19 vaccine? And if they say yes, then say thank you very much and walk out the door. We'll find you a different one. Because we're at a point now that if you don't know that these shots have killed hundreds of thousands, millions of people, then you either are in on it or just super ignorant, because the evidence is out there. Even the VAERS system alone, which is severely underreported, documents 38,000 deaths. The fact that they're still supporting this shop when people, kids are dropping dead, people are dying every day. I mean, immediate having seizures on the floor right after injection. You know, it,
Yep, yep,
yeah,
exactly.
just find a new doctor. There are doctors out there that will say no, I used to and I don't anymore. Then stick with that doctor, or one that said no from the beginning.
So to come back to the mission, so I'm just going to continue here through these discussions. So these support groups and spaces, many eyewitnesses to COVID-related crimes against humanity have confirmed that what they experienced was not an anomaly, and they are not alone. Because that's probably the first thought you have, that, oh, this just happened to me and it's something completely out of the ordinary,
It is.
and is not happening, hopefully, to anyone else. And then the third prong of the mission is seek accountability. Recognizing, so this is, I think, very important, recognizing that the guidance, enforcement, and propaganda that enabled these crimes were coordinated and systemic. We are committed to holding those responsible to account, from the denial of early treatment to the forced isolation of patients to deadly and coercive hospital protocols to the imposition of vaccine mandates and digital ID schemes masquerading as public health. This project is about documenting the architecture of abuse. We are tracking the actions of public health officials, hospital administrators, medical boards, media operatives, and others who took part in suppressing dissent and endangering lives. So this last sentence here, you are tracking the actions of public health officials, etc. Tell me about that.
So if you scroll to the top, you'll see these 25 commonalities, and that paragraph really, you may have to go to
I have that. Yes, I have that somewhere else. I have it in a different
that. That is
tab.
where
Here we
right
go.
there. Yeah, that is showing that what we're seeing in in most of all the cases. And so we could take a hospital group, just say Kaiser, and pull all the Kaiser cases out of our database and see those cases and what was Kaiser doing, because and that those are, I think, will end up being either class actions or false claims cases. We've had a class action against Gilead for Remdesivir. we filed it in state court. It got removed to federal and then just got dismissed. But now we're looking at it a different way. But yeah, we can see which hospitals were getting the most money. We're doing the most of the commonalities, and we'll use that. This data is just super important. That's why it's so important that people document your story. I know it's hard to relive and retell, but this data is crucial to us winning this.
You said you have what, like 1,500 cases so far in your database?
Close to that. Yeah, not all of them are published because some of them are pulled for legal reasons. If an attorney is contemplating on taking the case or does have an open case, we'll take it off just for protect the integrity of the case. But most of them, I know over 1,000 are published.
And how many more are coming in? Let's say.
Well, what we're still getting. I mean, we're still trying to get people to document their cases. A lot of people aren't there yet. It's still too raw and fresh. Sometimes we have to talk to the victim on the phone personally 3 or 4 times to, build up their courage. Sometimes they'll do it without the camera on, or an anonymous name, because a lot of people they're getting backlash from their families and their friends and their job. They're not believed. And, if you come out and say this, it makes, rifts in the family. And this whole COVID narrative and response was all very, very well designed. It was intended to kill people. It was intended to injure people. It was intended to cause division. It was intended to close businesses. It was intended to cause divorce. It was intended all these trail of destruction that this COVID response has done was all well designed. Nothing was by accident. And the division in the families and the communities. Now you've got it's not just the racism that we have sometimes the blacks and the white. Now it's the anti-vaxxers against the vaxxers. Now we got this other, and you can control a community and a society better if the people are divided. And that's been our biggest challenge, is to unite. I always say, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like each other, but we all have to stand on the same side of the battlefield. If we all share the one value that freedom is our birthright, then we can't shoot soldiers on the same side of the battlefield. I mean, of course, there's going to be personalities that clash, or, those disputes breaking out, but we still have to stand united on that basic principle, or we will lose this country. And more,
Cece, you mentioned just a moment ago that you mentioned that for many people it's difficult to go, because you kind of go public once you are in this database. When you look at the cases, you see their name, you see when they were vaccinated or not vaccinated, where they live or not, and the state they live in, the hospital they went to. You see all that information, and so it's you're personally identified. There's a picture of you. So many people probably are not ready to go there, maybe ever. But you said that you also give people the choice to do it in an anonymous way. And why not? You can just either totally anonymous, or you have it in the database and it's not on the website, or it's in the database and on the website you have some sort of sanitized version so that people cannot be identified. There's no picture, the location isn't there, etc.
Yeah.
Maybe that way you could get more people to say, okay, under those circumstances, I'm fine. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
Because the more data you have, the better it is.
It's the data.
The more, if you had 15,000 or 150,000, I mean, that would be awesome.
Didn't we win? We hit 50,000 cases. Didn't we win this battle? The data is what's important.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so what I suggest is, we have been talking for almost an hour and a half. So I suggest that we go over the 25, since we are in here, the 25 commonalities, just have a look at those. And then we do a second part of the interview where we pick up where we left off, because I think we should really dive into the website, look at the cases. So, for example, I just want to show this briefly.
Yeah, we haven't even touched
here. This is on the website here, and there is the entry point to viewing all the cases, all the documented cases, and here the entry point to documenting your story. So there's a lot of stuff you can discover here. So we can go and talk about documented cases, and then also you talk about the legal cases, because you have been very closely involved with the legal cases.
Yes.
We touched on that a little bit, but I would like to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots we could talk about. We haven't even touched the surface on what our foundation has been able to accomplish in the last 5 years. I'm so proud of everybody. I did want to tell your audience that we have a historic event on the 28th of June, next Saturday, not tomorrow, but next Saturday, in West Palm Beach, Florida, with the most incredible lineup of speakers, freedom fighter, attorneys, doctors, activists, independent journalists, victims themselves. Tickets are at truththrive.com. They're only $40. It's going to be absolutely historic. It's been covered by the many media. So come and really learn what's going on, and listen to these experts, learn how to, this is a solution-based event. The speakers have been instructed to come with solutions, and they're all very, very well renowned, world famous, or at least famous in our country. The heroes on the front lines of this whole fight. So
yeah, it's a great event. I'm going to I have the flyer, so I'm going to put it into the interview as an overlay so people can see. But I have it here in front of me. So there are people like Dr. Judy Mikovits, she's well known, Warner Mendenhall, Todd Callender, Rachel Rodriguez, one of the attorneys, Mimi Miller is there as well. Oh, that's wonderful. Dr. Jane Ruby, Dr. Alan Bain, Brian Long, John Baudouin. I don't know. How do you pronounce his name?
Baudouin.
Baudouin. John Baudouin is there. Teresa Long. Oh, this is great. I would love to go to this. This is wonderful.
Yeah, it's going to be so amazing.
Yes, West Palm Beach, Florida, on June 28th. So I'm going to edit this interview as quickly as possible so that it comes out before the event. Okay, great. And so let's just go over the 25 commonalities here. Isolation of victim is number 1. Denied any access to family. Yep, we have heard that from pretty much everyone. And then the strict adherence to EUA protocols. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, EUA is Emergency Use Authorization. So they can be unapproved drugs or experimental drugs like Remdesivir.
Well, Remdesivir was actually approved, but the use was not approved for. So it was an unapproved usage, and for that you also need an EUA, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't approved in the beginning. It later did become, but it was, like I said, it was a failed Ebola study drug that was administered under an EUA. So that meant that the provider was supposed to show you the EUA form. It said you must show the patient, and they must agree to it being used. Not a single patient we had or family member ever saw that form.
Oh, really? I did. You have to show so if it's under EUA protocol, you have to show this form to patients and tell them.
Yes, you have to say it's unapproved, it's experimental. We don't know all the side effects, but we do know that it's shown to cause kidney failure. I'll send you the provider EUA was 36 pages. The patient's EUA was 2. So that's, yeah, I'll send you both of those documents. They're interesting.
And so does that mean that every single person who got vaccinated with the mRNA products should have been shown this form as well?
Oh, yeah. Nobody was shown the EUAs.
Because nobody was shown.
Yeah.
Do you have to sign it, or do you just have to read?
Yes, you're supposed to agree and sign the paperwork that when you're in a hospital that you approved to be.
Well, nobody signed.
Nobody even saw the form. Nobody even was told it was under an EUA. Nobody even knows what EUA means. I mean, it's
emergency use authorization. So, and you cannot sue on these grounds because you were supposed to be shown this and you were supposed to sign and agree to it, and that didn't happen.
It's called informed consent, and that did not happen.
Yeah, exactly. And you cannot sue on.
Those are all of those were covered countermeasures. Yeah.
So Right. So it's the same thing with the PrEP Act. No matter what rules are violated, everything is okay because of the PrEP Act.
Yep.
By the way, Remdesivir. You know what? This morning before the interview, I went and looked up Remdesivir, and I want to show you this.
Run death is near.
All right. Yeah, run death is near. That's what it was called really early on. And by the way, the WHO, I think it was in the fall of 2020 already, that they recommended not to use Remdesivir.
Yep.
And that's why it was pulled from, I don't know, hospitals in Europe and other countries. But I think the United States might be the only country that kept using it and is still using it. Now look at this here. This is very interesting. It's the website is veclurihcp.com. So Vecluri is Remdesivir. I don't know if that's the brand name.
Remdesivir is the chemical, basically the chemical, and Vecluri is the brand name.
Okay, Vecluri. So you could have just told people, "Oh no, we're not giving you Remdesivir. We are giving you Vecluri," and nobody
exactly what they did.
It's the same thing. So HCP stands for what does that stand for? Yeah, it's healthcare professionals. It's health. Yeah, it's information for healthcare professionals, and I don't know who's running this website. If that is the federal government or where this is coming from, I don't know. But look what it says here. Look at this. The only NIH recommended COVID-19 treatment option included for adult patients hospitalized for COVID-19. So the only NIH recommended, they still have this on here.
Yep.
Do you think that Jay Bhattacharya knows about this?
You know, he should. I'm not sure, but our foundation, I don't know if you see these bracelets, I just took mine off. We have them on our website, and they are medical legal directive. They're sizable, that say that you are allergic to Remdesivir / Vecluri, baricitinib, and fentanyl. So if you have one of these on and you go into the hospital, legally they cannot give you those drugs. And they have saved many lives. We've sent out thousands and thousands, probably 4,000 at least.
Great.
They will protect you from getting these drugs because they will still use them today. You can go in for a motorcycle accident and you wake up on a ventilator with Remdesivir in your veins.
Look what it says here. Indication. Vecluri is indicated for the treatment of COVID-19 in adults and pediatric patients birth to 18 years of age weighing more than 1.5 kilograms who are hospitalized or not hospitalized with mild to moderate COVID-19 and are at high risk for progression to severe COVID-19. Of course, when you come in with mild COVID-19, who is to say that you are at high risk for progression to severe COVID-19? So this is absolutely shocking.
It is. And they know from the trials, from bullet trials that shut down your kidney. And in the beginning, if you had kidney issues, they would not give it to you. Now they're giving it to people with one kidney or in kidney failure. I mean, it's absolutely baffling.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show this because I thought, oh, well, let's look up what's going on with Remdesivir because I heard that it's still on but to read this, first of all, that they're praising, and this website here, by the way, is designed for doctors, for healthcare professionals. It even says this here. You can go to the patient side. So you're on the wrong side when you are a patient. You're not supposed to see this. You're supposed to go to the patient side. But they have, I don't know, I didn't go to it. It would be interesting to do that. Right. So let's go back to where are our commonalities? I think they're here. Here we go. Yeah. So strict adherence to EUA protocols, and they did that brutally, as we will see in the second part of the interview. And then they denied alternative treatments. That happens over and over again in all these cases. Denied requests, often ridiculed. And even for things like vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc,
they did not want you to.
Ivermectin, of course not. Hydroxychloroquine, of course not. Denied informed consent. We already talked about that. Gaslighting.
Huge.
Lots of gaslighting going on. Yeah. Constantly told their loved one was a very sick man or a very sick woman. They would be they would die because they are unvaccinated, or if they refuse to be vaccinated, or if they don't comply with hospital protocol or ventilation. Wow. Removal of communication devices, call lights, glasses. They took glasses away. People couldn't see. Cell phones,
Hearing aids.
communication
Mm-hmm.
devices, hearing aids. Yeah, good point. Hearing aids. Dehumanization, being treated like an animal, often described as being treated like an animal. Pervasive sense of wrongdoing. This is also interesting. Family members, friends, and often the victim all had a feeling that something was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes they couldn't put their finger on it, but they just felt that there's something not going right here. This is not how I've usually been treated in a hospital, or they're not telling me something. Yeah, they almost every case.
Yeah. In some of the cases I read that some of the survivors that said, oh, I was afraid of that nurse.
Absolutely.
I was afraid I got the impression that they were trying to kill me.
The doctors and nurses would tell them, you're going to die. You're going to die. Yeah.
I know. I found one of the cases that unbelievable. So maybe that's not a singular case.
Oh no!
Came and said, "Oh yeah, you're going to die. We are going to put you on Remdesivir and the ventilator, and you're still going to die."
It's most of our cases.
Guy said.
Yeah, it's not just one case. It's most of our cases.
So that it really sounds like they had some sort of script, because that is so weird.
Yeah.
Why would you?
Yeah.
This is so cruel. This is so sadistic.
Evil.
This is not what a doctor should do. And these people weren't even particularly sick. That's the other thing. They weren't dying.
That's right.
Vaccination discrimination. Yeah, discrimination based on vaccine status. Mocking verbal and physical abuse for being unvaccinated. Rapid oxygen increased quickly, causing lung complications and damage. I also saw some cases where they didn't get enough oxygen. They were begging to get more oxygen, and it wasn't given to them. Refusal to communicate, doctors, nurses, and hospital administration refusing to communicate with family or advocates. And then this one here, dehydration and starvation.
Many people died.
Many cases,
people
right?
died from starvation just in itself, and dehydration, yes.
I mean, that's just unbelievable. I didn't look at all the 1,000 cases or what you have up there, of course. I just looked kind of randomly under some of the categories, survivors and people who died. And I found denial of food and also denial of water
every time.
Every single one.
Mm-hmm.
Given diuretics. So you don't give them water and you make them pee so that there's no water left in them.
And giving them laxatives with no food.
Laxatives. Mm-hmm. Restraint abuse. Yeah, also came. Yeah.
Lots.
Physical restraint and or chemical restraints used. Failure to follow legal requirements around the use of restraints. So that would also be covered by the PrEP Act, because they probably did that when they put them on the ventilator and intubated them. Ventilation used as restraint, and ventilation was covered by the PrEP Act for COVID-19.
I've read records where it said ventilated for behavioral control. That's not why you ventilate somebody.
Wow. What? For behavioral control?
Yeah, they were agitated. So they're just going to vent themselves to deal with them. They were too busy.
My God. Bathroom denial of bathroom use.
They try to get out of bed and they fall.
Or they forced onto a catheter or rectal tube.
Yep.
Non-emergency ventilation. Yes. I also, just by my random going through a couple of them, give the lungs a rest,
I've heard that thousands of times.
Well, like 87% oxygen saturation of your blood, and that person is told, oh, oxygen saturation is too low for monoclonal antibodies, but we're going to put you on a ventilator. Yeah. Mm-hmm. DNR pressure or shenanigans. Pressure to sign do not resuscitate agreement, ignored or falsified DNR. So that apparently also happened a lot. So which is what happened to Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Palliative care pressure, yes, came across that too, just by looking at a few cases. That victims, terrible, awful what was happening there. It's just like a scheduled murder. There's one case that I want to go over with you because it's so horrible.
That's the Jonathan Crenshaw case. They scheduled his murder for Saturday. It was like Monday. He was eating, talking. He got to talk to his mom about where he wanted to be buried. His friends came in and said bye. And the doctor would walk by and he'd say, am I still executed on Saturday? And they were like, yep. And kept walking.
Wow. Well, I read a very similar case, very similar. The whole thing reminded me of the maid protocol, the assisted suicide protocol in Canada.
Yeah.
Because the nurse comes in and said, are we ready? And the mother was begging, oh, give me a few more days because I still want to talk to my grandchildren. And the nurse was angry and stormed out of the room, but pressured this poor mother so that she said, okay, fine, I don't want to do it today. I want to talk to my grandchildren, but I promise you that I'm going to sign in 2 days. And then 2 days later she comes. So they also scheduled her murder.
Yeah.
They came in, they said, oh, are you ready? The two daughters were there. And then she started dumping all these opioids into her, and then she removed the oxygen and she died. And it wasn't, she struggled. She couldn't breathe. And the two daughters watched her struggling for breath until she died. Oh, absolutely. I mean, she was killed. It was a murder. They were watching her being murdered. Yeah. Isolated even in death, denied access to dying victims, denied access to view the body after death, denial of last rites. Well, there's one case that I saw where a woman refused to take Remdesivir, and then the doctor said, well, but she said, oh, you're telling me that I'm going to die, so I want to talk to my priest. The doctor said, well, you can talk to your priest only if you take Remdesivir.
That's the Gail Seiler case. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So she took the deal. I mean, it's like, what kind of devil's deal is that? She took the deal. She took 1 dose of Remdesivir. The priest came and gave her the last rites, and then she refused being put back on Remdesivir, and she survived. She survived.
She did.
Police security involvement. Yep. Lots of police security used to keep victim isolated. Families threatened with arrest, real standoffs in the hospital with 6 policemen. There was one case.
That's Gail Seiler's cases too, as well.
Oh yeah, that's a really interesting case. I want to go through that case. That's an incredible case. I mean, they're all incredible. Refusal of transfer, refusal to change doctors or make hospital transfer. Yep. Infections and injuries, tons. Sepsis. MRSA. What is that?
MRSA. It's a hospital-acquired bacterial infection.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, it's dangerous to go to the hospital because there are all sorts of bacteria in the hospital, and you might very well get infected.
Broken bones, black eyes, weird
from necrosis, which is death of skin tissue.
They're not moving the patients. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Right. Neglect, lack of basic care, general hygiene, grooming, bathing, linen changes. Nighttime emergency.
Almost every case. Something happened in
pressure to make instant life and death choices with little information. Perception of malevolence. Yeah. Victim states or feels like hospital staff is torturing them or going to kill them.
Almost every case.
And then this is an interesting one. Unqualified staff, treatment by foreign, travel, FEMA, or unqualified medical staff. Talk a little bit about this one.
So any of the good nurses or good doctors, they get rid of pretty much because these doctors wouldn't go along. And then they started having these traveling nurses or the hospitalists that were just mainly, they were consortiums of for-profit consortiums that would just travel from hospital to hospital. Many were foreign, and they were just there to put you on a ventilator. The nurses were paid $8,000 a week to be these traveling nurses. They never
$8,000 a week.
Yes, they were, and they never connected with the patient. They didn't have a lot of them didn't share our same culture. They didn't, have a relationship with the patient. They just traveled to different hospitals with this extremely high pay just to follow the protocol. They were just like little robots, and the nurse is the advocate for the patient. Their first job is to stand between the patient and what the patient wants and the family wants and what's being done. And if they could run them off because they wouldn't comply with the vaccine because the nurses were mandated to get it, which drove away many of the good nurses. Or the nurse got the vaccine and they could no longer work because they were injured. Or they just said, I'm not going along with this death protocol. You're killing many whistleblowers, you're killing my patients. We have to stop this. And the doctors would say, just do your job. They would leave because their conscience couldn't. And then you bring in these traveling nurses that will do anything you say and pay them $8,000 a week.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, that's a huge amount of money. That must be a multiple of what a nurse usually
30,
earns
yeah.
in a
What was
week.
that? 32,000
And
a month
yeah, 30, so that's like 300, I don't know, 350, $370,000 a year
for a
or
nurse?
something like
That's
that
good money.
for a nurse. And also, if you have if you travel, somebody who is not from that hospital. I mean, in hospitals, you must build up some sort of a community between the doctors and the nurses, and they know each other, and you want to make a good impression, and you want to do the right thing. I mean, there must be some sort of kind of moral restraints, because you know that what I'm doing is going to be noticed by others,
Right.
and I want to be in good standing. I don't want to be known as the nurse that walks around at night giving morphine to patients to kill them. So, but if you bring in all these people who nobody knows and who don't care about, who don't care about the hospital, who don't know anybody there, it's a very different. All of a sudden, the environment changes a lot,
Yes.
and it becomes much, I would imagine it becomes much easier to commit these kinds of atrocities in this kind of anonymous environment
Correct.
where people don't know each other anymore.
Correct.
Wow, it's depressing. It's really haunting
It is.
to read
It's
these
been a
stories.
long 5 years.
It's haunting, and people, let's talk about that next time too, because people want to move on. It's very hard to deal with it. I mean, even if you haven't lost a loved one, even but everybody, I think, by now knows people, friends, family, any people who have at least been harmed by
Yeah.
the vaccines or by the hospital, whatever happened to you in the hospitals, and people are afraid to go to the hospitals.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cece.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.